Welcome to the Prevent the Preventable podcast, where quite simply, we're on a mission to help you live longer by preventing health complications before they start. Every year, there are millions of cases of brain hemorrhage, but there really doesn't have to be. And at the Natalie Kate Moss Trust, we're committed to ensuring that those that don't have to happen don't. In this podcast, you will learn more about brain hemorrhages, their causes, how to prevent them, and so much more. Expect honest, straightforward conversations that will give you the information you need to take back control of your own health and potentially prevent the preventable.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Prevent the Preventable podcast. Now, on today's episode, we have Suzy Lane. Suzy suffered a brain hemorrhage back in 2022, and today she'll be sharing with us her experience, what she remembers from the day, what happened afterwards, initially and in the years following, how that changed her perspective on the life, and so much more. I think today is going to be a difficult conversation for both her and myself, as I think about from my sister's perspective of what she went through when she experienced her brain hemorrhage, but also the countless and millions of people that experience a brain hemorrhage every single year, and the fear that they must feel when they learn that they have indeed had a brain hemorrhage. So I hope that this episode, one, conveys, the reality of brain hemorrhages to a lot of people, but also gives a lot of people who maybe have experienced a brain hemorrhage strength. I believe that Suzy is a walking example of what is possible after a brain hemorrhage if we have the right treatment. And so that is what we're working on at the Natalie Kate Moss Trust, is to find better treatment so that more people can survive a brain hemorrhage just like Suzy. For me, this episode was incredibly powerful and really eye-opening, and I'm sure it will be for you as well. So without further ado, let's dive in. Suzy, morning. Welcome to the Prevent the Preventable podcast. It is a pleasure to have you here. Obviously, we've met a couple of times, yeah, isn't it?
Yes.
And having heard your story and everything that you've been through, I've been really touched by what you've been through, but also how you carry yourself now and how brave you are in your journey. And I think this episode is going to be particularly helpful for anyone who obviously has experienced a brain hemorrhage, and to learn from you and your experience. Everyone's experience will be very, very different. But I think, people who go through something get told how to deal with a situation by someone else who's maybe not walked in their shoes, hasn't been through that situation, but you have. And so I'm sure they can learn a lot from you. I asked you to send me some notes before this session, answering some questions around your experience, around your brain hemorrhage, the hemorrhage itself, life after it, etc. You said that when you're in hospital, you said to the surgeon, "Please don't let me die." And I think when I read that, and even now, it kind of really puts a lump in my throat, and it gives me goosebumps all over my body. Really hits me at a sort of a very visceral level. Yeah. I can't imagine the fear that you felt in that point. And I do feel very emotional saying that, because I can only imagine how, say, like my sister would have felt in that moment. And how, millions of other people feel when they're experiencing brain hemorrhage. And I think, there was certain points, something you said, and I'm going to read it here, is that you were very raw, you were very real and honest in what you were saying. You wrote, "People have told me that you redefine yourself when something happens like this, but I don't think that's happened to me yet. Since coming out of hospital, I have often felt very alone, anxious that I will die, and guilty for the horrendous experience I put my daughters through. I feel I've lost my whole identity and my whole life has changed." And I can't imagine how much it probably has changed your life, your identity, your perspective on things too, and how difficult that is to navigate. Any traumatic experience is difficult to navigate too. But equally, I think the more that we kind of face into those realities, the more that we review them, the more that we do things such as this. And I said just before, you're so brave in the sense of, coming on here and talking about these experiences. And I'm sure that's a huge part of the recovery in itself as well. So again, thank you. We'll go into all of this too. Let our listeners understand a little bit more about what was life pre-brain hemorrhage.
Busy. Very busy. I worked full time in a stressful job for social care. I think, in my notes, I was paid for 37 and a half hours a week, but actually worked probably a lot more. Yeah. Had my own house. I've got 2 grown-up girls. I had a very, very busy, enjoyable, stressful life, which, probably used to complain about, but actually I loved it. I just used to do all the things that you do. Worked full time, looked after my house, went to the gym, spent time with my partner, was with family, went out with friends on holidays, walking in the lakes, I've actually written notes, and spending time with my friends, looking after my house, looking after my mum, just all normal stuff.
So a full life.
A full life, yeah.
A busy life.
I was healthy and well. I used to go running, went to the gym twice a week. I thought I was invincible.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
It's interesting you use that word because I think so many of us, if not all of us, fully believe that we are invincible. We fully believe in our immortality until something major happens, until something dramatic happens, either to ourselves or to a loved one.
Yes.
And I think in those moments, through those occasions, we kind of we start to understand the fragility of life. And actually, we're not invincible. Yes. That everything can be taken away in a split second. So take us back to, I think, Sunday, the 9th of October, 2022.
Yeah.
Not long ago, really.
2 years.
2 years very soon.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you remember of that day?
So, normal day. Been out the night before. It was my dad's birthday. We were celebrating it at my sister's house. I was driving, got up in the morning, got ready, picked my mum up, went to my sister's. We all live sort of very locally. I had a bit of a get-together for my dad. And then just a split second, I had a really bad headache. And because I was driving, I said to Neil, I think we should go because I wanted to get my mum home, but just felt very, very unwell. So I got my mum in the car, took her home. And it was just a normal Sunday, normally spend the weekend together. And then I'd go back to my house ready for the week ahead of working from home, as we'd done from COVID times. Went back to Neil's house. I said to her, I think I'm just going to go and have a lie down because I felt sick, cold, shivery. Put my dressing gown on. Went to sleep for a couple of hours, which is not like me. And then I got up a bit later on. The girls were at home, so I was very aware of the fact of where I should be and where I was. Messaged Rosie a couple of times saying I'm not feeling great. She just said, why don't you stay where you are? But, I said, no, I'm coming home. So I got in the car and drove back home. And still had a bad headache, but felt a little bit better. Went to bed, got up in the morning, didn't sleep well at all that night. Went to bed, got up in the morning, logged on for work, phoned my GP and said, can I have an appointment, please? I feel really unwell. So I had an appointment made at 11:10, still sticks in my mind at that time, but I never made the appointment. I remember skipping down the stairs, but my back was killing, absolutely killing, and they subsequently told me that was the blood in my brain that was in my spinal cord, which of course you don't know, do you? You don't have a clue. And then I was online in a meeting, just still carrying on, which you do, you just carry on with life. And I just suddenly saw these thick black lines in my vision. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. I just literally thought that was the first thing that came into my mind. I shouted Molly and I said, you need to do something. And it was just chaos, I just pressed the sort of stop button on the iPad. And I could hear my manager saying, what's wrong, Suzy, what's wrong? And I just turned her off. And then Molly phoned 999, and by which time sort of the symptoms had kind of got a lot more severe.
Yeah.
So I was being sick, I was shivering, couldn't stand the light. I had a rash all over my body. And I don't remember an awful lot more, apart from Molly kind of being involved in that chaos, trying to speak to the person on the other end of the phone who was saying, can you get your mum to the hospital? And so she was moving cars around trying to get me out. I refused to move. And in the end, he said, we'll send an ambulance, because Molly had said, I don't think my mum's going to make it. That was basically what she said. So,
Sorry, Fiona, not took my guess.
So eventually the ambulance came. I remember the girls, 2 paramedics coming up the stairs into the house, and I was sat on the bathroom floor refusing to move because my head was pounding, absolutely pounding. And they said to me, we really need to get you in the ambulance, but I refused to move. And I remember Neil being on the phone saying, Suzy, you need to get downstairs. But and then Rosie came back from work, and eventually I went shuffled down the stairs on my bottom. I remember saying to the paramedic, I like your hair.
I just like, why would you say something so ridiculous? And she, you know, says odd things in its moments. So I've done that before.
And she was saying, well, I like your house, but anyway, we're not here to discuss that. So eventually I got down to the bottom of the stairs, and they put me in a chair, put me in an ambulance. And I was sat bolt upright, which is the worst thing I think you can do. But of course, nobody knew what was happening to me at that time. But I refused to sort of like lie down or... anyway, so we arrived at A&E, and I sat on a corridor in that chair. Oh, well, in a bed it was, but sat upright with Rosie with me. And it was chaos in A&E, absolute chaos. And Rosie said I was making the most horrendous noises, but I can't remember that.
Yeah.
And eventually I was seen. I had a CT scan. And then they put me in a cubicle and just kind of whizzed in and said, you've had a brain hemorrhage. Or you're in the middle of having a brain hemorrhage and you need to lie flat. I was just like, no, this is not possible. I was just expecting them to give me some pain relief and send me home, you know. So they lay me flat and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to fill the left side of your brain. Excuse me, with coils. We're going to go up through your groin into the left side of your brain. Then you're going to lie flat and you'll be taken to intensive care. I was like, wow, really? Is this, you know?
Yeah.
So that was kind of it, really. The day had gone by, so I've been there for 11 hours in A&E. Rosie was there still there with me, and Neil arrived. And then eventually, probably about 11 o'clock that night, I said to them, you need to go home. I was still in this cubicle in A&E. They turned the lights down, not quite sure why. And then they transferred me to a ward and left me there overnight. And I just lay there thinking, oh my God, what on earth is happening? And I just kept thinking, am I gonna live? Am I gonna die? You know. And then the next morning, I was prepped for surgery. Do you want me to carry on with what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, they took my nail varnish off because they said, you know, we need to, you know, we can't go in for surgery with nail varnish on. And then I remember seeing the girls, they FaceTime me that morning because, of course, I'm lying there. And
Were they allowed to? I know it was 2022.
Yeah.
Just so it's post-COVID. They were allowed to be there? Or was there any restrictions?
so there was only one person allowed with me in A&E. So that was Rosie. Molly went off with her dad and sort of. And then later on that night, Neil came. So there was two of them there. Once I got into intensive care, there was only supposed to be two, but it was always masks and everything, but they allowed the girls and Neil to come. They were the only people who visited me. So yes, I then went for surgery. I FaceTimed the girls and just said, and they were, Molly was crying and Rosie was I just remember Rosie saying, she loves you, and I said, I know, it's fine, it's okay, it's fine, I'm going to be fine. And then I went down for surgery, and that was probably the scariest point for me because my teeth were chattering and I was thinking, oh my God, this is it, I might not, And they say to you, well, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to go up through your groin into your left side of your brain and fill it with coils. If we can't do that, we're going to cut into your skull and try and fix it. But there is a possibility that we won't be able to do any of those. And if we can't, and you won't survive. So I thought, God, this is real. And they were trying to get a cannula into the side of my wrist. And for some reason, they couldn't do it. And the surgeon came out and she said, what's the delay, to these two? And I just said to her, please don't let me die. And she sort of said, not on my watch, you won't die, And that's it. I don't remember anything else. And then I went into the surgery and, of course, all my stuff was left on the ward. So I had no phone, no means of contacting anybody. I woke up in recovery and I thought,
Do you know how long that was after the surgery?
don't know. It must have been quite a long time. So I went in for surgery quite early in the morning. I don't know. I had no recollection of time. Neil said it was quite a number of hours later.
Oh, it wasn't like days or anything.
No, it was the same day. And then I was cared for by this amazing guy, and I don't know his name. Oh, it was just one-to-one care in recovery, and he just kept saying to me, what's your name? Can you move your legs? Can you move your arms? And what day is it? Who's the Prime Minister? Do all of those things. Just basic questions, really, but they just wouldn't let me go back to sleep.
Yeah.
And then after a long, long time, I said to him, I think I really need to let somebody know that I'm actually still alive, But I don't have anybody's number, and of course you don't really remember people's numbers, do you? Because you just have them in your phone. So he said to me, I know what we'll do is we'll have a look on your records and get your next of kin, which of course was Rosie. So he gave me a hospital phone. He dialed the number, put the phone to my ear because I wasn't moving really very much, and luckily Rosie answered the phone, which
She was just staring at her phone.
Yeah. So by this time, it was kind of early evening, and they'd all arrived because I think they'd just given up because they couldn't get any information. They didn't know where I was. They didn't know whether I'd survived the surgery. They just didn't know, so they'd just come to the hospital and they were making their way to intensive care. And I rang Rosie and I said, Rosie, it's me. And Neil said that was probably the most relieving part of the day, that I was speaking and that I was okay, And so that was kind of what happened. And then, I got to intensive care and they were all there, and I just thought, oh my God, I'm alive. I'm actually alive, and my head's intact, and I've survived. How lucky am I, And I can honestly say that it was the scariest day of my whole life.
Yeah.
And to think that it'd gone in through my groin into my brain, it's just, even to this day, I still...
Well, he said it, yeah, don't go, do you? And they did it, and they did it.
And one did it well, yeah. And nearly 2 years later, I'm still here.
And you're here to tell the story.
Still here to tell the story. So, yeah, that was kind of it. And then from that, that'll have us spent 2 weeks in intensive care, lying flat. And that was probably the hardest part, because the recovery was grim. Yeah, it was,
Yeah. And we'll come on to that now.
Yeah.
Suzy, you're so brave. You are so brave for all of that. And I know sometimes when you face these things, you just don't have a choice, do you? No. But to come here and share that story, I think I said before, my whole body was just full of goosebumps, and, the trauma that you've all been through, really. The waiting and the not knowing and the uncertainty is one thing, obviously. The prognosis is another as well. And obviously we know, through the work that we do, the podcast, etc., we know, the reality of those statistics, brain hemorrhage. It doesn't mean that no one will survive, but it's a slim chance. And we are so lucky that you are here today. And as I said, you're so brave in terms of sharing this story, because hopefully it helps us with spreading the awareness of brain hemorrhages, because they are unfortunately so common, and we have to make changes. And so your bravery in sharing the message kind of, I hope, for a lot of people, makes them aware that of the reality of having a brain hemorrhage. It is scary, it is devastating, it is incredibly traumatic, and that's why through all of this work, we hope that we can make a difference as well, because we really want, yes, the podcast is prevent the preventable. Yeah, we want to prevent them. But we hope that, when somebody does have a brain hemorrhage, the example of the operation and the treatment that you had, which was highly successful, we hope that that success rate goes up. So if someone has a brain hemorrhage, it's not as, devastating, whether, the reality of someone potentially dying or becoming severely disabled. So thank you for sharing that, because I think, as I said, hopefully it does help us with this bigger mission as well. We talk about it, we'll put it on our website and our page around the podcast, and we just say it isn't just a podcast, it is a mission. It is a mission to make changes in this world and change the landscape.
Definitely. Yeah. I was very, very lucky to have such amazing treatment at Salford Royal. I had a team around me. We were just incredible. Yeah, very lucky.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of our researchers from Manchester University work there. TS. Dr. Adrian Parry-Jones, who developed the treatment that has decreased mortality by 10% at 1 month, works there as well. So, sometimes that's the case, isn't it, to being under the right doctor?
Yeah.
And is it a woman?
Well, so I had I think there was a lady surgeon, but my neurosurgeon was Mr. Patel from Salford Royal, and he's the sort of the person that continued to see. So he was the one I saw every single day in intensive care.
A huge thank you to Hugh James Solicitors for sponsoring this first series of the Prevent the Preventable podcast. Now, having your life torn apart by a brain hemorrhage is one thing, but learning that it could have been prevented and it was due to a mistake in your medical treatment is truly devastating. And whilst nothing can change what has happened, Hugh James's clinical negligence team can support those who have suffered a brain injury or bereavement due to a mistake in their treatment. To find out more about how and if they can support you, head to our show notes now.
So we said it earlier, everyone emerges from these things, whether it's a traumatic event, but it's disability, brain hemorrhage, very, very differently. And you've just said around your recovery being really hard, and that probably being arguably the hardest part.
Yes.
Let's go back to those maybe initial few weeks. What were some of the hardest things to come to terms with? What changed in terms of maybe physically or, mentally and emotionally? Were there any sort of obvious sort of things that were different for you?
So the 2 weeks I spent in hospital were really, really difficult because of the ongoing headaches, not being able to move and just feeling like, my God, this is such a massive change. Being in a bed where you can only see forwards and you can't see anything behind you. You don't see daylight. It's very distressing and unsettling, and the emotions were just incredible. So, I mean, I'm quite an emotional person in general, but not somebody who cries all the time. And that was literally after the first few days, just crying all the time. Every time I saw somebody, if anyone was nice to me, I cried. If anyone said anything to me, I cried. I just spent quite a lot of time crying. And also just not being able to process information, you know. I couldn't think straight, you know, and I couldn't, they put a television in the hospital for me, but I couldn't watch it because if I watched something, then I just kept seeing all this information flashing by. So everything was different. Just trying to recover and come to terms with the headaches and the feeling sickly, the sickness. I was constantly being sick. Everything just changed in that moment, you know.
And did those symptoms, the headaches, the feeling sick, were they sort of initially in those first few weeks in the hospital, did they subside over time when you went home?
So I think when I got home, the headaches were very, very much there. You know, they tell you that that's what you need to expect, you know. So I had a lot of headaches, a lot of fatigue, couldn't concentrate, you know. It was just, everything was different. And obviously I couldn't work, I couldn't drive, I wasn't allowed to lift anything, and I was just trying to adapt to a new normal, really. And it was frustrating. It was very frustrating. I never went back to my house. So I moved in with Neil, and the girls came. In fact, the girls moved in before I did. They already came out of hospital. So from just staying there for the weekends and stuff, we moved in. So it was just trying to adapt to everything being different. Yeah. But also I think there's the sense of, am I going to be okay? Am I going to live? Am I going to survive this? You know, when I was in hospital, they sort of say to you, the first 2 weeks, that's why we're going to keep you here for 2 weeks, because there's a chance that you could deteriorate. So I was worried about that. And then every time I had a headache, I kept thinking, oh my God, this is it. It's going to happen again. But obviously it didn't. So, you know, that was something, adapting to that, really. The feeling of being very tired was very difficult. So yeah, I think that was kind of the worst part, really. Just trying to keep going each day and wondering how long this was going to last for, if it was, you know, I was ever going to be like I was before.
And what support did you get at that point? Physically and maybe emotionally?
So I think, you know, the family support is just is so important, you know, being able to talk about it when you want to, and that sense of not feeling alone.
Yeah.
And I mean, Molly sort of had a month off to spend with me, and Rosie, you know, I wanted them to get back to normal, you know, but they were really struggling with that.
How old were they at the time?
So Rosie's 25 now, so Rosie would have been 23.
Yeah.
And Molly's just turned 21, so she would have been 19.
Yeah.
So having that support from them, you know, Neil's support was just incredible. Friends, you know, just that sort of compassion from people, reconnecting with people that I'd not seen for a long time. I've never had time to see them, you know, and just having that sort of ongoing support from the team at Salford Royal, I think. Trying to sort of navigate your way through it was tough, especially when you're not, like, you've never really been ill before, you know. So yeah, I mean, there is gaps, definitely gaps.
What do you think those gaps are?
I think, you know, I think I've mentioned to you about, you know, I joined the sort of the group I was desperate to see how other people had survived, desperate to see how it was for them in the future, you know, because at that time it was it was very new to me, but I think some people need time. I wanted to seek out that support straight away. I joined the subarachnoid hemorrhage support group.
And was that a in-person, online? Was it person?
Yeah, so I kind of thought that was going to be something that we would all really connect. And the people there were lovely. They really were lovely, but there wasn't that kind of... obviously, everybody has different stories to tell, but there was only myself and I think there was 2 other people who had brain surgery. So we all had very different experiences, and people seem to dip in and out of it, you know. So the support that I was looking for just simply wasn't there. I understand the reasons why they do it, but again, it's only for a very short time, you know. I feel like I need more time. I need people to be there. I need that time. 2 years on, you know, there was people in that group who had a brain hemorrhage quite a number of years before, and just sat there and cried all the way through it. You know,
Felt like they almost hadn't processed their emotions.
Yeah, they were still really struggling, and I remember sitting there thinking, I don't want to be like this. I want to get on with my life. I want to get back to the person I was before, but I don't know if that's ever possible. I don't know if that's possible, but, you know, 2 years on, I think I'm so different now than I was 2 years ago, obviously, you know. So for anybody who's, you know, either just had a brain hemorrhage or, you know, I think it is possible to feel so much better. You do feel better.
Yeah.
But at that time, I really needed. So for me, a group that's ongoing, if that's possible, that you could go to, would be fantastic.
Yeah.
The thing that absolutely helped me the best was the one-to-one therapy. Yeah. My therapist, Catherine, she was incredible. And she sat there and just, at the first conversation I had with her was over the phone, and just cried all the way through it.
So I'm just in a therapy session, so I thought,
Yeah. And I think she must have thought, oh my God, you know, but she was so good. But again, it was time limited, you know, and I needed more time. I needed more time with her.
Yeah.
So again...
And that was given to you through the NHS, or was that part, yeah?
Yeah, so I was referred by my GP, but I think I was referred to talking therapies, and then they stepped me up a bit. But then when you've connected with a therapist, you don't really want to do it.
And it's like that, because sometimes it's hard, isn't it, to find a therapist who connect.
Yeah, she was really good. And I remember her saying to me one day, because I just had this incredible feeling of guilt and what I put everybody else through. And she said to me, if you were listening to somebody, I think I've written it down, if you were talking to somebody who had been through what you've been through, what would you say to them? And I said, I probably would tell them that they'd been really brave. And she said, yeah, but why can't you tell yourself that?
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is hard, because I don't feel brave. I feel like most of the time I'm an emotional wreck. But yeah, I think it was that kind of flipped the switch almost for me to, you know, yeah, you have been brave, but like you said before, sometimes it's because you don't have a choice.
Yeah. But I think it's, in a way, you do have a choice, right? You can either just kind of sit back and let what's happening happen, let your emotions take over, not get out of bed in the morning, you know, and you're not doing that. Yeah, you might have your emotions take over you sometimes, and we all do. I definitely do it at certain points. But the point is that you keep moving forward, and that is the point. And to me, whether you move forward crying, you know, you're still moving forward. And I think that's braver than just, you know, everything working out perfectly.
Yeah. I've never, ever done that. Since day one, I have never stayed in bed. Yeah, I've always got up, had the routines. All right, had the different routines, but got up.
Where do you think that sort of drive to do that came from?
I think it's just what I've always done, because looking after, you know, my daughters, and, you know, I always get up with them, always get up with them at whatever time they're getting up for work or whatever. Always got up, always got in the shower, always got dressed, always was ready for the day. And that really, really helped.
Yeah.
A huge thank you to Colony Co-working for supporting us with this first series of the Prevent the Preventable podcast and for providing us with this beautiful studio too. Now, at the Natalie Kate Moss Trust, we are a small team working remotely, but on a mission to make a big difference. But finding the balance between flexible working and working in inspiring spaces surrounded by inspiring people can be a hard balance to strike sometimes. Colony is an expanding network of co-working spaces in Manchester, a place for entrepreneurs, creatives, freelancers, startups, and established businesses. A place where everyone comes together, where ideas pollinate and businesses flourish. And Colony is helping NKMT do just that by supporting us with this podcast, by helping us reach more people with this vital message, and ultimately helping us to prevent the preventable. To find out more about how Colony can help your business grow, head to the show notes now.
So you said before as well, you think there's some gaps. Were there any other gaps you feel that are kind of missing in terms of that post brain hemorrhage support, whatever that support may look like?
I think that the sort of the care in the community could be, they do these tests in hospital to see if you can make a cup of tea or make a piece of toast. And if you pass it, then you're good to go. The fact that you've not been on your feet for 2 weeks and you've just been lying.
Yeah.
I did a memory test in the hospital and I failed it.
Yeah.
But nobody redid that test, So, and I saw a lady who was lovely, who came to see me on the week that I was, when I came out of hospital, but I never saw her again. So, I think that's just the way it is, isn't it, with services? But I think that ongoing support in the community would have been helpful.
Yeah. And it's, I guess, the challenges of the NHS, isn't it, as well? Whilst you've obviously had treatment that, in certain parts of the world, one wouldn't even be available, that wouldn't be at the same standing, that has saved your life. And, you're living, as far as I can see, relatively normal life. We heard of some of the people that might have had a brain hemorrhage.
Yes, definitely.
And, but then there are certain things that we think, well, we could do this better, you could do that better. But again, it comes back to, it's just time and money and funding, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's thinking about, particularly as we think about this, obviously, as a charity, our core mission is changing the whole landscape of brain hemorrhages through prevention and treatment. But there is obviously the community that needs that support. And we're trying to understand a little bit more, I'll speak very candidly about this, where do we fit in? How can we support? There are a lot of brain injury, brain rehabilitation charities out there. Do we allow them to do the work? Or is it that brain hemorrhage is so unique?
Yeah.
Even you saying you went to the subarachnoid group, that's a subtype of brain hemorrhage again, again, really niche. So really kind of understanding where that support is needed as well, because I think it is needed. I think the challenge comes with the fact that the scale by which somebody's life will have been affected by a brain hemorrhage is so vast that it's hard to have a one-size-fits-all, to your point before. And even regardless of that, as individuals, as people deal with things in different ways. So again, you've got that as a challenge on top of that. So I think I agree with you. I think there's a lot that needs to be done. I do think there's probably also a lot that needs to be done for families as well, and offering that support too.
I think that's definitely the case with, my girls have dealt with things quite differently, but I still think there's that need for support for them. I didn't understand sort of, how much kind of at the time, because you're fighting for your own survival, how much it affected them. I definitely think that family members need that support, certainly for us as a family, that sort of therapy would have been really useful. And all you can do is look at sort of private therapy and finding the right person. Yeah, definitely family members.
Yeah.
Because I think now we're probably at a stage as a family that, the girls know that I'm going to stick around and, I'm not going to go anywhere, I'm not going to die. But there was all that time where, if I had a headache, it would bring back those recurring sort of thoughts to them.
Yeah.
And so I think some sort of therapy for family members, if they need it, would be useful. Really, really useful, because it's hard to find. I've sort of looked at the girls have Googled, like, trying to find support, but it's just hard to get, you know, it is.
And it is hard. I think part of therapy as well is it's hard. It's just hard to find the right person. And you can Google people's lists of, you know, an expert in, I don't know, trauma or grief and this, that, and the other. You don't know what their personality is like. You don't know what the, you know, your relationship would be like with them. And I've had maybe 4 or 5 therapists over time, and they'll all be really helpful at different points. But like you saying, I had a really great relationship with Catherine. You know, it was really hard to kind of build on that relationship. And every single time you like, I feel like I'm not getting enough out of this now. I feel like maybe we're at the end of the relationship, then starting again. And it's like, I have to explain this all again. And that's tiring as well. So, you know, like you were saying before, that continuous support is helpful, whether it's a group or a therapist, actually, because, you know, every single time then you go in and that people know you, they know your past, they hear your story, you're not reliving it every single time as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But
Suzy, how are you now?
oh gosh, 2 years later, I'm doing okay. It's been a bumpy road, very up and down. Everything's changed. Life's a lot calmer. I don't have as much stress. I perhaps don't think that I'm going to die anytime soon. I don't now need as much reassurance off people. I used to say to Neil probably every day, I'm not going to die, Ma, I'm not going to die. Which now sounds a bit ridiculous, but at the time. And he used to say to me, no, you're not going to die because you've been fixed, you're fine, you're fixed. And so I feel a bit stronger. Memory's still not great. I think I've now started to feel a bit more grateful for like kind of what I've got and how lucky I am to be alive. And instead of thinking, oh my God, why did this happen to me? I'm now kind of thinking, well, it's happened and I need to kind of reinvent myself a little bit. But it happened at a time in my life when I didn't really feel like I needed to do that. So it's been a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
But I don't have as much health anxiety. I don't have the same amount of confidence that I had because I used to be a confident person. I don't drive like I used to. But, you know, I'm getting back into sort of being a bit more, you know, I'm doing a bit more exercise. It happens and then it stops, but, you know, I'm doing that. So, yeah, I think I'm doing all right. I think I am doing okay.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a whole spectrum of emotions that happens. You know, you kind of talk about there's the anxieties that are probably less, but they're probably maybe still there. You know, it's practical things, there's physical things. But there's also gratitude. And I think as hard as it can be, sometimes we are then really grateful for those small things, you know, because we appreciate, you know, that it was awful and there was potential for it all to be gone. But we're so grateful for the fact that we are here. And, you know, there's so much to look around and be grateful for. You know, just sitting here in this lovely space and, you know, having this conversation and a nice cup of tea. It might be a bit cold, so we'll get you another one in a second. But, you know, there's so much to be grateful for. And I think when you go through something huge like that, you maybe do recognise those smaller things more often. And whilst we might want to go back to our busy lives and, you know, we might not have had the time to recognise some of those small things like as well. So I'm immensely grateful for you sharing all of that. I really am. And I know how difficult it can be sometimes. And as I said, even I know at those points I don't want to ask too many because I feel like I'm like. So, but to end the podcast, we will be asking all our guests 3 questions. And so let me start with the first one. What is one negotiable for you now in your routine, your habits, or your life that you know is supporting you in your health?
Yeah. This is a difficult question. This is a difficult question because I think when you've always led quite a healthy life, it's hard to... I often think, if you were sort of somebody who, smoked 10 cigarettes a day, you could say, right, well, I'm definitely not going to do that anymore, because that's... But I think when you lead a healthy life, it was difficult to know what to change. Yeah. So I think for me, it's now just everything in moderation. Just live your life as you want to live it, but perhaps just, be careful. I think for me, it's keeping stress levels down because I didn't have any of the symptoms. I still don't know why it happened to me. Yeah. So, but the one thing that I do know is that I was leading a very stressful life. So keep stress levels down. Prior to me having a brain hemorrhage, I used to sort of have a very, very racing heart, which I can only put down to being very stressed, with my job. My job was very stressful. I had my heart checked, my heart was fine, but it was that. So I think for me, leading a calmer life now is the one thing that I need to do.
No, it's very... we didn't ask you to say it, but it's very helpful you did say that, because obviously a big part of what we're talking about is, is balance, and it is thinking about things like your stress and your nutrition and your exercise and whatnot. As we had Adam Greenstone come and talk to me the other day, and there'll be an episode with him about blood pressure and the potential causes of high blood pressure and how that can impact you and lung hemorrhages. And obviously one huge component of that is stress. Yes. And even he said, we're not asking you to be a nun or a Buddhist and, be meditating all day and never drinking alcohol, never doing, but it's really recognizing how is this impacting my health. A little bits of stress here and there are actually not a bad thing. And you said the word, it's about balance as well. Yeah. And not overdoing it too much. And that's really helpful.
I think you kind of know, it's listening to your body and doing what you can do. I can do much more now than I could do 2 years ago. Yeah. When it happened and but at that time I was very much like I couldn't do the things I wanted to do, but now I can. So it's just doing them perhaps not quite so much as I did before.
Patience, maybe.
Patience, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Great, yeah. If you could get more people to understand one thing about brain hemorrhages, what would it be?
I definitely think there needs to be more education around brain hemorrhages because we had no idea what those symptoms were. I'd never heard of a thunderclap headache, which is what I had. All of the signs of, brain hemorrhages I didn't know. So I think there needs to be a lot more education in that respect. The girls actually put it up on their social media site. These are the signs. Look, but I had every single one of those symptoms of a stroke brain hemorrhage. I think as well we need to be more. I had definitely had a mini episode of a brain hemorrhage, but I was sort of like disregarded by the doctors. I actually presented myself at A&E with a horrendous headache, and they put it down to a previous injury that I'd had on my neck. So, and then sent me home. Nobody looked at my brain, and that was in 2021.
Oh wow!
So you know how you feel, but I didn't know the possibility that it could have been something different. I just didn't know. So I think that education is really important.
Yeah.
And also for people to understand that, there is life after a brain hemorrhage. If you're lucky like I am, that you can get your life back and you can celebrate it with all the things that, you want to do. And I know that's definitely for me. Yeah.
And I'm sure you will inspire many people with this as well. So I don't know about that. There you will. Finally, Suzy, do you have a motto for life? And if so, what is it?
I think life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful. because it is. I think the appreciation of life now for me is there, which never was before. You know, I'm grateful for time. I feel that age now is a gift, you know, to be able to get older and celebrate, you know, anniversaries and birthdays and graduations and all those things. I will never take any of that for granted again. Yeah, powerful. Suzy, thank you very much. You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
That episode, at so many different points, gave me goosebumps. I had a lump in my throat for a lot of the time when Suzy was telling us about what happened to her back in October of 2022. And I am sure that it was also incredibly emotional for a lot of you listening as well. I'm so grateful to Suzy for coming on today and for being so brave in sharing her story and really helping us with our mission in the Natalie Kate Moss Trust to share more about brain hemorrhages, the reality of them, you know, how devastating they can be, but actually that there is hope, that they don't all have to be devastating, that we can create change, that you can lead a relatively normal life after having one. But we need to do more to ensure that more people have that opportunity to survive a brain hemorrhage. So to find out more about what we're doing at the Natalie Kate Moss Trust in order to better prevent and treat brain hemorrhages, head to our show notes underneath this podcast where you can find links to our website, or head to our Instagram or any of our social channels to keep up to date with what's going on. And if you would like to get involved in any way, please do by heading to our website and you can find out more information there. We've got so many amazing stories coming up on this podcast and in series 1. And I hope that they give you a sense of understanding about the reality of brain hemorrhages, but also help you better understand what you can do to prevent them from happening to you as well. So until next time, prevent the preventable.